Hello, welcome back to the potting bench. Today I'm going to describe the production of orchids by using Keiki. Keiki is a Hawaiian word which means baby. Now, orchids, some people when they hear the word orchids, they start freaking out, thinking like it's a very difficult plant to grow. That's not the case. The orchids are relatively easy plants to grow. The plant kingdom is divided into flowering plants and non-flowering plants. The flowering plants are divided into monocotyledon plants and dicotyledon plants. Orchids are monocotyledon plants. So yes, orchids can be propagated by seeds. That means it's a sexual reproduction of orchids. But that involves pollination of the flower, acquiring the seeds, and then germinating the seeds. I will tell you right now, even with an experienced person, it's really difficult to get orchids to seed, and then it's even difficult to grow orchids from seeds. So the best and easiest and quickest way to produce them is asexual reproduction, which means you are using the actual plant material to reproduce it. And in asexual reproduction of orchids, some people are using tissue culture, and some people are using division, and some people are using kikis, and some people are using offshoots. All this depends on how the plant actually gives you the propagate, or that material which you can use for propagation. In this case today, we will be using Kiki, and the plants, the orchid varieties which gives most kikis are dendrobiums, oncidiums, some oncidiums, epidendrums, sobraria, and the regular usual phalaenopsis. In the whole topic today, or the video, we will be talking about kikis, and I have some examples and some samples of kikis and where to get them and how to go about growing them. And in asexual reproduction, which is actually basically the best thing to do, because now you're going to get a true to parent offspring. Anything which is reproduced asexually, which means no sex is involved, that means there is no cross-pollination or pollination for that matter, you are more likely to get a true to parent outcome. So asexual reproduction of orchids is the best way to go. Something to note about kikis. Kikis are produced at the top end of a flowering cane, or of a cane of an orchid. While a difference between a kiki and an offshoot is the shoots are produced at the base of the plant. So for example, this one here, that's a kiki. You can see there was a stem, and then at the top of this stem, that's where the kiki was produced. This is an dendrobium orchid, and they tend to do that. They tend to shoot out a stem which will bloom, and then at the top of it, that's where they produce kiki. Sometimes when you don't need it, you just cut the kiki off so that you leave the stem, the cane, and hopefully the cane is gonna bloom at some point. If you need flowers more, if you need to produce kikis, then you leave the kikis and it will produce. As opposed to shoots, this one here is a shoot. You can see it originates where the canes meet. It's at the very bottom of the cane. That's a shoot. That's a shoot, and that's a kiki. There is a difference there. So kikis are basically young plants. They are independently grown. You can take it off and keep on growing. So in development of kikis, some orchids have shown some really strange behaviors. This was a dendrobium cane. You can see it was cut off. It's already almost rotting, and it's mushy at the bottom here. But at the very end of it, it's producing a kiki. This kiki, I won't take it off now because the roots are not as developed. So we will leave this in the cane. It's almost like an experiment. So the cane still feeds the kiki until when the root starts growing, and then we can just snap it off and plant it that way. In phalaenopsis orchids, it has shown some very weird tendencies. This phalaenopsis here bloomed, and then the flower stalk was cut, but it was cut halfway. At the node, it started producing a kiki, and they left it. And the kiki actually developed into like a really beautiful big seedling. And the seedling now is shooting out a flower stalk. So the flower stalk is still attached to the mother plant, and then the flower stalk has already developed a Kiki, which is now its own plant, which is now developing a stalk. So I'm expecting a flower from this flower stalk here. So it's like a trifactor. It's like a mother stalk, and then a stalk, a Kiki, and now a Kiki is producing a flower stalk. Probably if this goes the way I want, maybe I pot it and do some other TLCs, this might turn into a flower stalk which I won't cut, or just remove something below the node and see if that's going to produce either a Kiki or another flower stalk. I'll see. So I thought that was a really cool thing to show in a further node. Towards the end here, I will be propagating a Kiki. So we will take this one off the dendrobium and propagate it. Now you have to remember one thing. Kikis are small plants, they're really small. So be mindful when potting them. You may need to choose your pot size. Let's say I'm gonna use this. It's a 3-inch pot to propagate this guy here. So what you usually do, and the best recommended, is to actually snap it off. Instead of cutting, you snap it off. Now you can see how much roots I have in here. And if they will fit in this pot. But before I put this in a pot, I will start preparing my material. I have here a Kiki, which I snapped from the dendrobium. I have a clay pot. This is an orchid pot because dendrobiums are epiphytes, so I will put it in a more clay which has more holes in it for aeration purposes. And I have my own orchid mix here. This is custom made, which is usually just bark, perlite, and charcoal. It's activated charcoal, horticultural grade activated charcoal found everywhere. So put a little bit more of the mix there before I put my Kiki in, and then make sure, remember, being an epiphyte, the roots will go anywhere you want them to go. But when putting this, usually I add in wet sphagnum moss. So I put wet sphagnum moss in and around the roots to make sure there will be aeration, but at the same time it's gonna keep holding moisture for a long time, because being tender seedling from the actual mother plant, who knows when it's going to dry. So it's gonna dry faster than it needs, and this way I'll keep a little bit more sphagnum moss in there just to make sure that the plant actually is supplied by enough moisture. And then I will put more of the loose orchid mix around it to make sure that it stays there and it's stable. And after all that, I will make sure I wet it. Like, make sure everything is really wet and moist. Sometimes you may find a Kiki is longer than what you actually expected, so it starts wobbling. You can get a nice bamboo stick or a craft stick or anything, stick it in there, and you can stake your plant until when the roots takes and it will start falling. So now I have here a nice beautiful dendrobium seedling from the mother plant, which is this guy. If this was a big production thing, I will have this whole plant, all these Kikis removed and potted, and this way I can multiply my dendrobium collection. That's how you actually propagate plants from Kikis. You get these plants which produce Kikis, then you snap the Kiki off and you put it in the pot it the way we did. Some orchids like Sobraria are really not like epiphytic, they are more terrestrial, so your potting mix might want to be a little bit more heavy. And the last important part, this seedling is a dendrobium digibum. I potted in this pot and I'm gonna leave it in the greenhouse or in a nursery or wherever you're leaving it. No one will ever know what this is. So the most important part of finishing everything here is to label your plant. Write a label when you propagate anything in the world. This way we don't have these unnamed plants all over the place. So take a sign, Dendrobium digibum, the date, and if you had the color of the flower, you can write it there, because nobody will ever know what color this is while it's growing until when it actually blooms. But it's better for people to know it beforehand. So write a label. I will put all the information needed there, and I will stick this label into the plant, and you put your plant where you want it to stay at the staging end. Thank you very much for watching this. I hope you have learned some stuff in it, and hopefully you will subscribe to this channel. If you have watched it up to this point, like it, drop a comment, and please subscribe and keep watching. Thank you very much. Have a blessed day. Bye.